Last night began quietly, too quietly. My friend Ethan burst through my front door without knocking. He always did that, like the world might end if he waited politely. "Come on," he said, breathless. "There's a band playing at Miller's. Opening act starts soon." I did not want to go. The house felt warm, safe, still. But Ethan had that restless energy, the kind that pulls you along whether you want it or not. So I grabbed my jacket, checked my pockets, and followed him into the night. The bar was already loud when we arrived. Music thumped through the walls, low and heavy, like a distant heartbeat. Inside, the air smelled of spilled beer and old wood. We found a small table near the back. I remember placing my phone on the table. I remember that clearly, because later, that memory would not make any sense. We drank, not heavily, just enough to soften the edges of the night. The opening band started playing. People cheered, lights flashed in slow pulses. Time slipped. It always does in places like that. And then, almost casually, I reached into my pocket. Empty. I frowned and checked again. Still empty. A thin thread of unease pulled tight in my chest. "My phone's gone," I told Ethan. He shrugged at first. "Probably on the table." But it wasn't. We searched carefully, under napkins, between chairs, along the sticky floor. Nothing. The music kept playing, but it began to sound far away, like I was sinking underwater. I checked the bathroom. Empty counters, dim mirrors, no phone. When I came back, Ethan was already holding out his phone. "Call it," he said. "Simple solution. Obvious." I nodded and took the phone. My fingers suddenly felt slow, heavy. I dialed my number. The line began to ring. Once, twice, then click. Someone answered. At first, there was only breathing, soft, wet, too close to the receiver. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, a giggle, low, raspy, wrong. It crawled through the speaker like something alive. Then the line went dead. Ethan stared at me. "Well?" I swallowed. Someone answered. His expression changed, not scared, just puzzled. "Call it again." So I did. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. No answer. Again. No answer. Again. Nothing. Whoever picked up the first time was gone. We searched for another 20 minutes, every table, every corner, even outside near the dumpsters, but the phone was simply gone. Eventually, Ethan clapped my shoulder. "Man, it's probably stolen. It happens." Maybe that was true, but something about that giggle, it did not sound like a thief. We left just after midnight. The air outside felt colder than before, sharper, like the night itself was watching. Ethan offered me a ride, but I declined. I said, "I'll walk." I needed the quiet, needed to think, needed to convince myself that none of this was strange. The walk home took 15 minutes, 15 very long minutes. Every step felt slightly off, like I had missed something important, but could not remember what. When I reached my house, all the lights were off, just how I left them, still, silent, normal. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. And that is when the world stopped making sense, because sitting neatly on my nightstand, right where I always left it, was my phone. I stood in the doorway for a long time, not moving, not breathing, just staring. The screen was dark, peaceful, innocent. Slowly, very slowly, I walked over and picked it up. It was cold, like it had been sitting there all night. But that was impossible, because someone had answered it. Someone had laughed. My hand began to shake. That was when the notification appeared. One missed call from Ethan's phone, time-stamped 11:47 p.m., exactly when we had called it. I did not sleep much that night, because every time I closed my eyes, I kept hearing that giggle again, closer each time, warmer, like whoever made it was no longer very far away. I told myself there had to be an explanation. There always is, right? Phones glitch, memories blur, people make simple mistakes all the time. I repeated those thoughts like a quiet mantra as I sat on the edge of my bed, but the room did not feel right. It felt occupied. The house was silent. No television, no traffic outside, just the slow tick of the clock on my wall. Tick, tick, tick. Each second seemed louder than the last. I turned my phone over in my hands. The battery was still at 70%, exactly where it had been earlier that evening. If someone had taken it, if someone had answered it, they would have had to bring it back, quietly, carefully, while I was gone. A chill slid slowly down my spine. I stood up and checked the front door. Locked. The windows closed. The back door still bolted. No signs of anyone entering, no signs of anyone leaving. Just the stillness of my empty house. I should have gone to bed, should have forced myself to sleep, but something restless had taken root inside my chest. So instead, I checked my call log. Once, twice, 3 times. There it was, the missed call from Ethan's phone. 11:47 p.m. Duration, 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Just long enough to answer. Just long enough to laugh. My throat felt dry. Without really thinking about it, I pressed the call button. The phone began to ring. Once, twice, 3 times. I almost hung up. Then, click, breathing. The same breathing. Slow, wet, too close. Every muscle in my body locked tight. "Hello?" I whispered. No answer. Only that breathing, steady, patient, like whoever was on the other end was in no hurry at all. My heart began to pound. I tried again. "Who is this?" The breathing stopped. For one long, terrible moment, there was only silence. Then, that same raspy giggle, closer now, clearer, like lips pressed directly against the microphone. My hand jerked. I almost dropped the phone. "Stop calling me," I said, my voice thin and tight. The giggle cut off instantly, and then a voice, low, dry, scraping like gravel dragged across concrete. "You called me." Every hair on my arms stood up. I knew that voice, not from memory, not from anywhere specific, but my body knew it, in the same way you know when something is standing behind you in the dark. "I think you have the wrong number," I said quickly. Too quickly. The line stayed silent for 5 full seconds. Then the voice spoke again, soft, almost amused. "No." A pause, long, heavy. Then, "I don't." Something inside my chest began to unravel. I swallowed hard. My mouth tasted like metal. "How do you know my number?" I asked. Another long pause, and then it inhaled, slowly, through clenched teeth, the exact same sound from before. When the voice returned, it was smiling. I could hear it. "I know your name, too." My stomach dropped, cold, weightless, impossible. Because before I could say a word, the voice whispered my full name, first, middle, last. Perfectly. The call ended. Just like that. No click, no goodbye, just dead air. I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, the phone still pressed to my ear. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window, pale, wide-eyed, breathing too fast. Slowly, very slowly, I lowered the phone. My hands were shaking now, not violently, just enough to make everything feel fragile, unstable. There was only one thing left to do. With numb fingers, I dialed *69. The automated voice responded immediately, calm, normal, completely unaware that my world had just tilted sideways. The last incoming call came from a pause, static. Then, a number located in California. I live in Indiana. The clock on the wall kept ticking. Tick, tick, tick. But now, between each second, I could have sworn I heard something else. Very faint, very close. A slow, patient breathing. I did not sleep. Not really. I lay in bed with my eyes closed, but my mind stayed wide awake. Every small sound in the house felt magnified. The refrigerator humming, the soft creak of settling wood, the distant whisper of wind outside. And beneath it all, I kept waiting for my phone to ring. Sometime after 3 in the morning, I gave up pretending. I sat up slowly. The digital clock beside my bed glowed red in the dark. 3:12 a.m. Too early to call Ethan, too late to pretend this was normal. My phone rested on the nightstand where I had placed it. Quiet, still, harmless. I hated it. I stood and walked into the kitchen. The floor felt cold under my feet. I poured a glass of water, drank it slowly, listened. The house listened back. That was when I heard it. Faint, distant, outside. A single metallic sound, not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the silence. My chest tightened. I moved toward the window, slow steps, careful steps, like something might hear me if I moved too fast. The street outside was empty. Moonlight stretched thin across the pavement. Everything looked perfectly normal. For a moment, I almost laughed at myself. Then, it came again. A ring. Not from inside the house, from somewhere outside. Thin, hollow, like it was coming through water. My blood turned cold, because I knew that sound, even though I had never heard it here before. A payphone. I frowned and leaned closer to the glass. There was no payphone on my street. Hadn't been one in years. And yet, the ringing came again. One single chime, then silence. My phone buzzed in my hand. I flinched so hard I nearly dropped it. Slowly, slowly, I looked down at the screen. Unknown caller. My throat tightened. I did not want to answer. Every instinct I had screamed not to, but my thumb moved anyway, and I lifted the phone to my ear. Hello? Silence. Then, that breathing, closer than ever, wet, patient, waiting. My voice came out barely above a whisper. What do you want? For a long time, there was nothing. Just the sound of slow inhaling, slow exhaling, like whoever was there was enjoying this. Then the voice returned, rough, broken, too calm. Why didn't you answer sooner? My stomach dropped. I just did," I said quickly. The voice let out a soft, thoughtful hum, then a whisper, so quiet I almost missed it. "I've been calling every night." The room suddenly felt much colder. My eyes drifted toward the digital clock. The red numbers glowed steadily. 3:59 a.m. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. Too fast, too thin. The voice did not react. It only breathed, slow, steady, patient. Then it spoke again. "Look outside." Every muscle in my body locked. I did not want to move, did not want to turn, but something heavy and unavoidable pulled at me. Slowly, slowly, I turned back toward the window. At first, I saw nothing, just the empty street, the pale wash of moonlight, the quiet stillness of early morning. Then, the payphone rang again, right across the street, where there had never been one before. And beside it, standing perfectly still, was a man-shaped shadow, holding the receiver and looking directly at my house. I could not breathe. My lungs worked, but no air seemed to reach them. Across the street, under the thin wash of moonlight, the payphone stood where nothing had stood before. Old, metal, wrong. And beside it, that shape. The figure did not move, not even a little. It stood with one hand lifted to the receiver, head tilted slightly, as if listening very carefully. To me, my phone was still pressed to my ear. The breathing on the line matched the stillness outside. Slow in, slow out, in perfect rhythm. Like the man and the voice were the same thing. "I don't understand," I whispered. My voice trembled. The figure across the street did not react, but the voice did. Soft, gravel rough. "You will." A cold pressure spread through my chest. I forced myself to speak. "What do you want from me?" Silence. Then a wet, thoughtful inhale. "I wanted to hear you answer." Something inside me snapped tight. "That's it?" I asked. No response, just breathing. Then, very quietly, "You always answer, eventually." My fingers tightened painfully around the phone. The clock behind me clicked forward. 4:16 a.m. Outside, the man at the payphone slowly lowered the receiver. The motion was smooth, deliberate, too slow to be natural. My heart began to pound harder, faster, because the phone in my hand had not disconnected. The line was still open, still breathing, still there. Outside, the figure's head tilted, just slightly, like it was studying my house, studying me. Even from across the street, I could feel it, that terrible sense of being seen. Tick, tick, tick. The red numbers behind me changed. 4:17 a.m. The payphone rang, once, loud, sharp, impossible, because the receiver was still in the figure's hand. My blood turned to ice. On my phone, the breathing stopped. For the first time all night, there was silence. Then the voice whispered, right against my ear, "Wrong house." The call ended. I stood frozen in the kitchen, every nerve screaming, every instinct begging me not to look back outside. But I had to. Slowly, Very slowly, I stepped closer to the window and looked. The payphone was gone. The street was empty. Nothing stood across from my house. No metal box, no shadow, no man. Only the quiet road and the thin, pale light of morning beginning to creep over the horizon. My phone buzzed in my hand. I nearly threw it across the room. With shaking fingers, I looked down. One new voicemail. Unknown number. Timestamp. 4:17 a.m. I did not play it. Not right away. I told myself I wouldn't. Told myself I didn't need to. Told myself I already knew what it would sound like. But after a long, slow, terrible minute, my thumb moved on its own, and I pressed play. At first, there was only silence. Then, a soft, familiar breathing. Very close, very patient. And then, from somewhere inside my own house, behind me, the same raspy voice whispered,